is coming. It's a 6-month program that will help you to increase your influence, position you for the E and C suites, face gender and culturally nuanced challenges head on, and soar anyway. It's integrated training, skills building, and coaching to take you to your next level. Hey y'all, this is Culture Soup, where tech, culture, and business collide. It's a podcast that spoons up everything hot from social media. I'm your host, L. Michelle Smith, and each episode we bring you some of the most notable and not yet notable thought leaders in tech, business, and culture. Today is August 31st, and it's a Thursday. It's a special edition of the Culture Soup Podcast, Coaching Corner edition. It's been a while since we've done one of these, and today is extra special because, as you know, just last night we had an incredible event called Happy Anyway with none other than clinical psychologist, nationally renowned subject matter expert on all things mental health wellness, Dr. Jeff Gardere, America's psychologist, who, as you know, penned the foreword to my latest book release, Yes Please, 7 Ways to Say I'm Entitled to the C-Suite. This represented the kickoff to our collaboration, which was announced officially yesterday, called Coaching Plus Counseling. And we have a specific focus on the power of positive emotion to move you to happiness and therefore success. Last night was our opportunity to share that message with a group of leaders from across the country live on a private Zoom. This is your opportunity to watch and look in. If you're interested in incredible forward motion, coaching plus counseling may be for you. You know, I like to say that that book, Yes Please, is a lot of heart and brains because it combines culture and science in a way that we haven't seen before in the leadership aisle, let alone the business shelves. But now we're adding hands and feet. And that's always been my mission, to add walk to the talk. It's one thing to write about it. It's another thing to speak about it. But it's everything to be about it. Without further ado, here is the Happy Anyway event with myself, Coach L. Michelle Smith, certified executive and personal coach, and Dr. Jeff Gardere, America's psychologist. Let's get it. Welcome to Happy Anyway with Coach L. Michelle Smith and Dr. Jeff Gardere, America's psychologist. Why are we here today? Sometimes it simply takes more to lift you out of moods and mindsets and move you forward. So we reimagined things for you, and it really only takes 2 simple ingredients. You need a Fortune 100 certified executive and personal coach for clarity, some accountability, for acceleration, all of the above. You also need a licensed counselor for self-knowledge, to build healthy relationships with others and yourself, to deal with feelings and past hurts. And of course, you need all of this. Here's why evidence-based coaching and counseling works. The science-based approaches align. Heal what's behind while reaching for what's ahead. You'll learn new behaviors and find happiness faster. And after all, happy people are successful people. I'm Coach L. Michelle Smith, and I'm introducing to you Dr. Jeff Gardere, America's psychologist. We're offering certified coaching and licensed counseling, and this collaboration is more than just about a foreword in a book. And by the way, a very good one. I hope you'll pick up Yes Please, 7 Ways to Say I'm Entitled to the C-Suite. Coaching Plus Counseling offers for organizations and individual leaders, support and growth groups, executive and personal coaching, and counseling packages, 360 workshops and seminars, and individual referrals for coaching or therapy. We're not going to spend this entire time pitching you, but we are going to talk about something that's very important to the central context, and that is positive emotion. Some of you are in the circle, which is a part of my online private network. It's a private growth group, and we have talked and discussed positive emotion. Other of you have read the book, Yes, Please, 7 Ways to Say I'm Entitled to the C-Suite, and you've discovered that the core content is around happiness and positive emotion. In fact, that's the hero in the book. Still, some of you have been to book signings. Other of you have been in my coaching community. Some of you are brand new to my world. And for those of you who are, welcome, welcome, welcome. I wanted to take some time to introduce to you a longtime friend of mine. You have to know that Dr. Jeff Gardere and I go way, way back, probably to around 2003 or 4, something like that.
That's right. And I still had hair then, but go ahead. Yes.
He's funny, y'all. He's going to make you laugh. So everything's not so serious, right? And amusement is one of those positive emotions. We'll get there. But yeah, Dr. Jeff Gardere has been a friend since 2003, which puts us at a friendship of about 20 years. So I'm not just introducing you to a business partner. He was a friend first, and he continues to be. But I started working with Jeff around that time. He was working for the same publication I was. In fact, they were clients of mine. It was Sister to Sister magazine, and Dr. Jeff had a column there that was monthly, I believe. Maybe it was weekly. I'm not sure.
Yeah, monthly, yes.
And our mutual boss at the time, client of mine, Jamie Foster Brown, you probably know her name, who was the publisher and the personality of that magazine, suggested that I speak to Dr. Jeff because I was going through a divorce, and it was a bad one. Oh my gosh. And it was abusive, and I needed some clarity around a topic. And for me, I needed someone that I could trust because no one I turned to seemed to know the answer. And she told me, you know what? You just need to have a phone call with Dr. Jeff. I was like, okay. Now, she wasn't suggesting therapy or anything like that, but this is the way the man works. He's just this giving. Okay. I pick up the phone. We get on the line, instantly connect on the issue. He got me the insight that I was looking for, and I was able to move forward. I was able to get to the healing faster. Well, time would pass, and I would open my own. Well, I had my own agency then, but the agency grew, and I had huge brands that I was working for. And Dr. Jeff, I don't know if you've seen him on television before, but he is an excellent, excellent subject matter expert and spokesperson. And perhaps you've seen him on CNN. Maybe you've seen him on the Today Show. You might have seen him on Basketball Wives. All that to be said, Dr. Jeff has been in the limelight, but he still does the very, very important work. And when I approached him this time to be a part of Yes, Please, I don't know if you recall, those of you who have read No Thanks, he's quoted in No Thanks in probably the most compelling and provocative part of the book, where we talk about leaning into white privilege in order to glean good things from it, which is unheard of. But we actually found out what those good things are. For those of you who don't know what that is, pick up the book, okay? But I went back to him and I said, you know, this follow-up to No Thanks really deserves your voice. And it really deserves it because this book leverages science even more so than the first book. First book did have positive psychology in it. It had the 7 affirmations as the chassis of the book. And it talked about how you needed to use the positive self-talk to undo the negative self-talk and self-doubt. Well, we couldn't get our schedules together. And Dr. Jeff says to me in an email, well, why don't I just write your foreword? You could have sold me for a dime. I literally had to pick myself off the floor. What a gracious offering. He volunteered. So he writes the foreword to Yes Please, which lends it the credibility it needed. I mean, I had the credibility in my certification and my training already. And of course, with some of you beautiful people who are part of my coaching community, whose stories actually underpin the book. But to have a clinical psychologist come along and say, absolutely, what she's saying is scientifically correct, is like gold. So fast forward to the launch event in June. We had our friend Candace Presley from WSB TV who did the virtual launch for us and also did the book signing and fireside chat with me in Atlanta. And she raised a question, and I don't know, Dr. Jeff, is it then that it hit you? Because that's when it hit me. When she asked us what the importance was to have both a coach and a therapist on your team. And I had been thinking some weeks before, I was like, a team with a therapist, but who could I get? And I was thinking local. And lo and behold, he calls me, he emails me the next day, and he's like, we need to do some business. And I can't tell you how grateful I am that he has offered his expertise. I have several clients that have already said, sign me up, and they are already signed up for the individual referrals. But without further ado, I want to introduce to you Dr. Jeff Gardere. And Dr. Jeff, if you can talk about why this is important to you.
Sure, Coach Ellen. Thank you so much. And hello, everyone. It's so wonderful to have you joining us. We're really going to have an adventure this evening, and it's going to be an informative one. And I hope we can share some happiness and positivity as part of it. But when I offered to write that forward to your latest book, it really did. It seemed to me like peanut butter and jelly. I mean, it really went together. As I looked at many of the things that you talked about in your coaching, I said, all of this makes sense with regard to the research that I've seen and the work that I've done as a clinician. And so you incorporated a lot of work-life integration, not just work-life balance, but work-life integration, being able to have your professional life, but also it is supported by your personal life. One feeds the other. So when we decided to do this together and I gave you a call, I said, we really need to have that 1-2 punch. You're doing the professional coaching with people who are in the C-suite and different industries and different workplaces. I'm doing counseling with a lot of people who are in the C-suite. If we can do it both together, if we can get that professionalism along with some of the personal psychology and the growth, then people would be unstoppable in what it is that they're doing. And I'll share one other thing. In my work with executives, I work with everyone. I work with celebrities. I work with everyday folks. I work with, people in the C-suite and so on. One of the things that I noticed is that many of these professionals, many of the entrepreneurs, they had the dreams, they had the goals. They were doing all of the right things, but somehow they kept getting in their way, in their own way. Where was that coming from? Well, it was coming from past trauma that they had never worked through. It was coming from unhappy relationships or not being able to be in healthy relationships because of the past trauma. So I said, let's get together. And you already knew this, Coach L. This was already, in your mind. So we just brought it together and said, well, if we can get the person to be healthier psychologically, emotionally, and interpersonally, then they'll be better prepared for the coaching and for being able to move forward with the empowerment strategies that you talk about, Coach L, in order to get the happiness they want, not just at home, but also at the workplace.
Absolutely.
Not just at the workplace, but also at home.
Absolutely. Oh, Dr. Jeff, you really did summarize that so well. Thank you. And the timing was impeccable because so many people know me as an executive coach, but they kind of leave off that second part, executive and personal coach. Well, if you've worked with me, I look at the whole person. And this newest book really encapsulates that thought, because we look at the leader in a 360 way, we find out that the women that I discuss in this book are either pushed out, or they leave on their own, or they're pulled out of the leadership pipeline. And that pulled out piece is where we kind of get into the life and partnership, kids, home life, all of that good stuff. And those of you that know me know that there's no way to separate. I don't believe, and science doesn't say that you can either. You can't separate yourself. You're all one person. So whoever you return to office with, okay, is the same person that's at home. And nothing underlined this or underscored this more than the lockdown during the pandemic. How many of you discovered you were all one person doing all the things under the roof, right? I also unraveled in this book how many of the leaders were stuck because they had not dealt with past work traumas. What I did know to be true about these leaders was they would seek help, a therapist, a counselor, when it came to personal issues. They knew how to forgive the ex. They knew how to, talk to and coach the kids because you've been to the family therapist. But so many of these leaders culturally, because we have been held to the standard that's just unimaginable. The old black tax. You got to be 2-3 times as good to be in the room, right? You have to be as good. And even our brown brothers and sisters, they know this to be true. Their parents drill this into them. But what we learned was when they meet those workplace traumas, winning for them was typically either overcoming it or getting out. And so often they espouse the healing to the getting out or the winning when they actually hadn't dealt with the trauma. So it made sense to me, since coaching helps you to accelerate forward, and therapy and counseling helps you to look back at the things that hurt you before, even that inner child that you might need to speak to. Dr. Jeff can do all that. I don't do that. But I have noticed that my clients that have a therapist, a counselor, a psychologist on hand while they're getting the coaching, man, they accelerate faster than any of my clients. I see more impact in their lives than just by myself. Okay. So I want to take a moment to talk about positive emotion. And I made it a point to be clear, especially in some of the promos. When we talk about happiness, we aren't just talking about a giggly thing. Okay. For those of you who are familiar with the saying, this joy that I have, you didn't give it, the world can't take it away. How many of you know that? Just raise your hand. You've heard that before. That joy that is spoken of in that, someone raise their hand. Yes, Bernadette. That joy that is spoken of in that saying is really what science calls happiness. It's that deep-seated, intrinsic joy. We call it joy. That no matter what's going on, you can still tap into it. We have discovered that it is so important. These storms come, no matter what they are. Life is going to be lifing, work is going to be working. The storms will come. But how do you dance in the rain? This is the kind of happiness that we're looking for, the positive emotion that will propel you forward despite what's going on. So there are 10 positive emotions. I will leave the icon. It's a creative piece with you before we leave. Some of y'all know these because they're in the circle. And by the way, Circle is a membership that you can be a part of, and they have growth groups every month. But those 10 positive emotions are said by neuroscience to undo a negative mood. They're that powerful, but you need at least 3 of them at one time. And you also need to build new habits. Now, my clients know that I ask a lot of exploratory questions, and I try to get the answer out of you, because what's interesting is you have the answers. As I interviewed several of the women in this book, I uncovered that while they did not know to use the word, I tap into positive emotion. to get through this, this is exactly what they were doing. So the chief experience officer at the Utah Jazz, Andrea Williams, told me that when she was feeling particularly challenged or she was in a toxic situation at work, she would look outside of herself and encourage another woman. And that did a few things for her. One, it gave her a sense of pride. The other thing that it did was it brought her joy, seeing the joy reflected off of the other woman. And then it also gave her a sense of love and community right there with those women in her workplace and beyond. So there she tapped into 3. But the key is that she made it a habit. And this is how our brain actually learns. Habits. I'm teaching my 8-year-old this right now. We don't talk about the hippocampus, but the fact is that the hippocampus grows when you learn, and it only learns through repetition. That's how you learn the negative moods, and that's how you learn the negative self-talk. We have to unlearn that by repetitiously combating the negative with the positive. Dr. Jeff, what's your perspective on positive emotion?
Well, I think it really is the foundation of certainly releasing a lot of what we call the excitatory neurotransmitters. And one of the major ones is dopamine.
Yes.
So when you have that positivity and you do something that brings you joy, that neurotransmitter dopamine is released and it says, "Ooh, that was good. Do that again." And that's why you want to be able to build a lot of those positive emotions versus a negative emotion where you're getting more of an what we call the GABA or inhibitory that might slow you down, where we know what you really need to do is to find the amusement, to find the joy, to find the interest, to find the hope. All of that comes from the excitatory neurotransmitters. So it is important to begin building the habit of looking for joy, even where there may be some tragedy. We hear it in all our music.
We do.
Look for that, look for that,
silver lining.
Silver lining, smile even though your heart is breaking.
Yes.
One of the things I learned when I was working at America's Health Network is learning how to smile, and smiling on a dime becomes a habit. But not only can you do this, when you tell people to smile, but when you can, just like that, that works from the outside and goes inward. That smiling begins to change that emotion. And in a world of negativity, positivity is what negates that and puts you on better footing.
Absolutely. You know what? You highlighted the importance of intentionality, that we have to be intentional. And you also highlighted the responsibility and where it lies. It's with us. So even if you have to paste that smile on your face, if you do it enough, it will become genuine. I remember going through a camp when I was a teenager. And one of the things they would do, and I didn't understand it until the camp was over, they would start out really quietly. To be enthusiastic is to act enthusiastic. And they would make us say that over and over and over again. And we would get louder and louder and louder and louder and louder. And by the time it was over, you had a room full of 16-year-old enthusiastic people. And we were just off the hinges. And it just proves the point that if you put it into practice and if you do it over and over again, your brain actually responds to that. This is why it's important to have a gratitude journal. It's trendy. People talk about the gratitude journal. Oh, I have a gratitude journal. But what is that gratitude journal really doing? That gratitude journal is invoking gratitude. And it finds a way to make you thankful, even despite what's going on. And you'll find that if you make that a practice every day, every night, whenever it might be, that you will invoke positive emotion. And that positive emotion, it's the hero in the book. It's the weapon. It's a weapon, y'all. And if you learn how to wield it, you can weather some crazy storms. I remember when I was at AT&T and things had gone south. You read about that and no thanks. I'm on the 11th floor doing my everyday thing. And one of my colleagues stops me and says, I know what you're going through right now. And I have to tell you, you carry yourself amazingly. What is it? Well, I leaned into those things, those positive emotions. I didn't know what to call them, but there was hope because I'd already created other opportunities for myself outside of the organization before things went south. Hope fuels goal getting. You got to have hope to even set a goal. I had other interests outside. I was working on a podcast, okay? And that kept my interest. That's one of the positive emotions. So there we have two, hope and interest. And guess what? I'm a real techie. So getting into all of the microphones and what do we need to do to get it hosted and all of that good stuff, carving out 20 minutes a day just to work on that podcast, which is now in its more than 350th episode and 5 years old and in more than 70 countries, you can see where things like that can fuel positive emotion in your life, but you have to make it a priority and you have to make it a practice. So, Dr. Jeff, let's talk about.
Let me add this very
Sure.
quickly. By the way, that smiling is necessary for you to be in any position of power.
Yes.
People don't want to follow someone with a sour puss.
You are so right. You're right.
So this is really about when you're in that office, when you're in that C-suite, you are inspiring people with your smile because first of all, they're asking, what the hell do they have to smile about?
Yes.
They must have something really going on.
Right.
And you do, and it becomes infectious. There's something that we call mirror neurons. And so when you smile at someone, right? For example, Stacy, I'm going to smile at you right now. You ready for this? And there goes Stacy smiling back. It's the mirror neuron.
Yes.
And so just remember, it's about changing you, but it's also about leading and changing others.
Yes. Sometimes we get into ruts because there's so much going on in life. I mean, the world we're living in right now is not the happiest place. Agreed? So much going on. But this dopamine hit that he speaks of is core to a concept called the progress loop. And the progress loop simply says that when you achieve something, big or small, acknowledge that accomplishment, celebrate that accomplishment. If that means you just pat yourself on the back and say, "Atta girl," that's enough. But you could take it all the way up to going to get those Manolos that you've always wanted. Okay. Mm-hmm. You give yourself that acknowledgement, and that causes that dopamine hit. And guess what it tells your body? I'm going to do it again. So if you ever find yourself in a rut and you're not inspired, just do a little bit. Chunk it. Take a little bit at a time. Do a little bit of it. And then reward yourself for achieving it. And then get back in there and do another little thing and another little thing and another little thing. Reward yourself, reward yourself, reward yourself. You're going to have so much dopamine and you're going to plow through this and you'll enter a state called flow. You've heard of flow. This is how you get into flow. And flow can be addictive, but we won't even get into that. But getting to flow for some people is actually very hard to do because they don't know how. But now you have the keys. Do a little bit of something. Acknowledge your achievement. Celebrate it. Get that dopamine hit and keep going. And that progress loop will help you to go on. What I just described is a habit. It's a habit. This is, while it is science, it's not rocket science. It's very straightforward, okay? We have to build new habits. And I want to kick it over to Dr. Jeff to talk about the importance of behavioral change and how habits work to make the change.
Right. So it's exactly as you're saying, Coach L. When you do the little things, the incremental things, and then you have now what we call positive reinforcement. So that positive reinforcement says, I've accomplished something. Now I can go on to the next thing. Now I've accomplished that. I can go on to the next thing. And sometimes you're not always successful at some of these particular things, but then you can go back and say, look at all of the things that I've accomplished. This next thing is a bit of a challenge, but I have enough success in the bank, not financial, success, emotional, professional success in the bank, that I can draw from that, coast a little bit, and keep moving forward. So it's really about the holistic picture of this, not just basing, well, your success on what have I done lately, but more of what you are building day by day. Coach L, you're
Great. All right.
Yeah.
So now we're going to do a little coaching. If there was one habit that you could adopt or change, what would it be? And what would it allow you to do? You can either unmute or you can give it to me in the chat, but I'm going to encourage you to write it down first. Think about it, write it down, and then share. There's a reason why I'm asking you to do that. Let's give it a few minutes. I'm happy to bring this sneak peek behind the scenes of our Happy Anyway event that happened last evening on Wednesday, August 30th. And no, I'm not going to share the group coaching with you. I do hope that you will take the time to answer that question yourself, write down your thoughts in a journal, and share it with someone to get some feedback from them. That's one thing that we did in this growth group. This is what it became. The people within the group were able to give feedback to their other community members, and they really came up with some great ideas. Why am I not sharing the group coaching with you? Well, even though this was a public event, I am dedicated to the confidentiality of my community members, and the minute I started to coach them, they became community members. So, thank you for listening to Happy Anyway with Dr. Jeff Gardere and myself, Coach L. Michelle Smith. Find us online at theculturesoup.com, on Instagram and Twitter at The Culture Soup, or is it X? And on Facebook at The Culture Soup Podcast. Until next time.
The Culture Soup Podcast is a production of No Size Communication, LLC.
The Culture Soup Podcast is a registered trademark of No Silos Communications, LLC.